Thank you so much for coming to this second Sustainable Speaker Series. And this one is such a great topic. It's personal for everyone, and it has so much to offer. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our host, Peggy, and it is being recorded, so we'll be able to access it again and share it with others.
The focus of this series is sharing practical ways that we can care for our Mother Earth. So we're going to talk about simple ways, simple actions that each of us can do to show our love and appreciation for our planet and the people who inhabit it, because we care and because it's part of our behavior and our value system. So one sort of voice in the public domain who has spoken a lot about issues of climate change is Thomas Friedman, who is a New York Times op-ed columnist and also a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's the author of Hot, Flat, and Crowded: Why We Need a Green Revolution and How It Can Renew America. And this is what he says. He talks about how over the past 20 years, we have steadily removed man-made and natural buffers, resulting in stress systems, ecological, geopolitical, and financial. He explains climate change as the result of stressed systems on a global basis. But he also gives us hope by saying, and I quote, "Technically speaking, globalization is inevitable. How we shape it is not. As the world gets more deeply intertwined, everyone's behavior, the values that each of us bring to this interdependent world, matter more than ever. And therefore, so does the golden rule. It's never been more important. Do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. Because more people in more places, in more ways, on more days, can now do unto you and you unto them like never before." So obviously the pandemic that we're all still enduring is the prime example of this. So our hope with this series is to kick off lots of discussion and conversation and inspire some positive actions we all can take to do unto others and to Mother Earth in a kind and loving way. And our primary goal is to explain how practical everyday actions can help us all live a more sustainable life and create a better world for today and for our children and future generations. So we want to try to give some ways and some understanding so that it makes it easy to put these actions into part of our daily practice. Last month, we had two wonderful speakers, and we learned how the pandemic has changed our daily lives and our relationship with the earth. Meredith McCarthy from Heal the Bay showed us how some changes inspired accidental environmentalism during the pandemic by people staying home more, driving less, traveling and flying less, even eating less meat because you couldn't find meat to buy for a long time. And also she inspired us to become intentional environmentalists and to never give up hope and have a love affair with the earth. Stephanie Cochran, who is the founder of the Wasteless Shop and a true intentional environmentalist, showed us practical ways we can put our love affair with the earth into action in our everyday lives. So Stephanie, through her Wasteless Shop and her tips, makes intentional environmentalism easy. Now tonight, we are going to focus on our food choices and how important it is for us to eat for the planet. So Meredith, at our last session, spoke about the ways that animal agriculture contributes to greenhouse gases. In fact, 14.5% of all greenhouse gases come from animal agriculturalism, which is more than the transportation sector in its entirety. I don't know if any of you saw today's New York Times. The front page, there's a huge photo of a cattle feedlot. And the focus of the article was on changing what cattle eat so that what they expel into the atmosphere is less harmful. Today, Dr. Jenny Jay is going to share with us how what we eat can be more environmentally friendly. She has devoted much of her professional career researching the carbon footprint of food. Tonight, she will share the science behind why it's important for us to eat for the planet. Then following Jenny, Emily G will give us some insight into transformative agriculture and show us how we can make purpose-driven food choices when we're grocery shopping. We'll also learn how we can grow food from some scraps at home. Following Emily, we will have time to answer your questions. You can use the chat throughout the webinar to ask your questions, but we'll address them at the end of the series during the Q&A. And it would not be a South Bay Care Sustainability Series webinar without our eco-friendly giveaways. So stay tuned because those will be coming and you have to be present on the webinar to win. So now I would like to tell you a little more about our first speaker, Dr. Jennifer Ayala Jay. She is an award-winning scientist and professor who goes by Jenny. Jenny earned her BS, her MS, and her Ph.D. in civil and environmental engineering at MIT. She's currently a professor at UCLA and a director at CIRCE, a UCLA center that addresses community-based environmental research questions in underserved communities throughout Los Angeles. Her research addresses a wide range of topics from coastal water quality to antibiotic resistance. However, Jenny is especially interested in studying the intimate relationship between our world's rapidly growing human population and the global environment that makes human existence possible, particularly through the lens of food. Jenny is also the founder of Meals for Planet and hosts a website full of recipes and ideas for eating green. Here to teach us about the science behind planet-friendly food choices and how we can reduce our personal carbon footprint by greening our eats is Dr. Jenny Jay. Jenny.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation and the introduction. I'm very excited to be here, talk with you about one of my favorite topics. So we'll be going through, talking about food. It's always fun and relatable, but it's also just an amazing way that we can tackle a whole bunch of environmental challenges, not just climate. We're talking biodiversity loss, water, nitrogen and phosphorus pollution, all kinds of issues. So we'll use this slide as a bit of a table of contents because I wanted to go through saving climate for the end, but I wanted to just touch on a couple of these other topics, even though we don't have time to talk really about all of them. But just first, one mention about fresh water, because it brings home the point that food really plays a role, a major role in all of these different environmental challenges. So these are really the major challenges that we need to think about to take care of the sustainability of the planet. And the exciting thing is, if we make food shifts, we can actually at the same time address all of them and get healthier. So it's a very useful or effective lever to shift in our behavior because it affects so many things and we get healthier. So I like to start off with this example. I'll ask my classes, picture 1 liter of soda. And so that's got at least a liter of water, but it probably has a little more hidden water in it, like water for the plastic or for the ingredients. How much water do you think goes into it? And people usually say around 8, 10 liters. So the correct answer is in the hundreds of liters. And that really gets people thinking about, well, first of all, why? And it's because of the sugar in the soda that requires a lot of water for growing. So it brings home this idea of resources. If it requires resources to make a product, we need to account for all the resources that go into all of the ingredients in everything. So even our genes have a water footprint. Everything would have a water footprint, we would call it. Another topic, I mean, anyone who's seen much of the United States knows a lot of it is used for farming. A lot of our land is converted to farmland, not in just this country, but around the world. So we just want to be careful to do that in the most efficient way, and see if there are ways we can do it better as we try to feed 10 billion people healthfully by 2050. So land use is one of the major resources that we need to consider. And so this is an example of land footprint. So this is land use required for foods per kilogram of food. And you can see that there's big differences for the amount of land required for food production. And beef here is the largest land requiring food. So understanding that, I wanted, there was a very cool study that happened. I want to just explain it to you. This came out a couple of years ago in a very good journal in our field. What these authors did was they recognized that beef is has an outsized impact for land use, also climate, as we'll see. And so they did a big math problem to figure out how you could get the nutrition that you would get, calories, the fat, the protein that you would get from a burger, by eating other foods. And they ran an optimization to figure out the foods that could really replace that nutrition. And I just love the answer, maybe because I personally love peanuts and peanut butter, but they actually came out with beans and peanuts as just really important foods because they're nutrient dense. They can give us a lot of protein and fat, calories to get us through our day. But they're also very affordable and accessible items. So this paper was very, very important, first for just pointing out that these foods are accessible and affordable, can play a critical role in helping us shift away from more environmentally intensive food items. But they also had published these numbers, which are very typical in the literature in the field. But these are, I just wanted to show as one example. The cropland needs per person per year went from 1,200, almost 1,300 down to 126 with the plant replacement. But what's really startling is that the total land saving is 40% of the contiguous US land surface that could be recovered, could be rewilded, which would be a huge sink for carbon from the atmosphere. So and of course, no one expects everyone to give up all of their beef and eat peanuts and beans. That's not the point of the study. It's more of a visionary thought example or a thought experiment of what can we do as we shift diets. Diets are shifting all the time anyway. Over the decades, people eat different things. So if they're going to be shifting anyway, why not also address our health crises and shift toward a healthier diet, and also save the planet while we're doing that. So big benefits that can come from making shifts. And then I really like to talk about antibiotic resistance because I'll get to show you some data, some very cool data that my lab has been working on for the last few years. It has to do with food because agriculture is such a big consumer of antibiotics. So antibiotic resistance, if you haven't heard about it, it's actually one of our society's huge major challenges going forward. We are afraid that our current arsenal of antibiotics just are going to cut it less and less. And so much that people are saying that the amazing medical care that we appreciate could be threatened. So it's something that we really need to be thinking about. And I'll just go through this quickly because we don't have a lot of time, but this is basically saying if you have a purple cell that is stronger and you apply antibiotics, the strong one survives and reproduces and passes on those strong genes. So this is like evolution. It's just a natural selection, really. It's a natural process. So whenever we're applying antibiotics, we will get this process. And so what we really need to do is be careful how we use them. And 80%, a little less now, because it's trending in I would say, the right direction. But the majority of antibiotics are used in animal agriculture, and they actually come out in the fecal matter, and not just the antibiotics can pass through the bodies, but antibiotic resistant bacteria can end up in that fecal matter. And that's what my lab's been looking at. So we've been collecting air bacteria from the air near farms that give antibiotics and farms that don't. And we tested 1,200 different cultures, different isolates for the resistance to antibiotics. And we were able to publish these results because we showed very consistent more increases in the resistance in the bacteria just in the air, so that we collected from public areas in California. So what we've been doing, it's leads to one of our most fun and exciting projects. We're following these bacteria all the way through our watersheds to our coastal waters. So we've started a surfer project to look at antibiotic resistant bacteria where people get exposed to stormwater after it washes down our cities. So the whole environment is connected. And so manure from factory farms is packaged up as fertilizer, spread all over in our landscaping. Rain comes down, washes the city down, and we had people in the coast recreating in the coastal water getting exposed. And so this was the launch day of our project. We've been studying repeat surfers. So they come and let us swab their nose regularly on their way into the ocean in the early morning. And so it's been really an exciting project. A lot of undergrads have volunteered to help us. We see the MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, coming in the rain. And I just had to show this pie chart because before the rain comes, we only see 3% of our surfers with MRSA in their noses, but it went up an order of magnitude after the rain, so during the first flush. So another way that we can attack an environmental challenge through food is by supporting antibiotic-free agriculture. So, and that's really an increasing problem still. So to climate change now, just a word, we all know the climate is changing. We understand even why. We've been putting greenhouse gases in there. This is already impacting food systems as well. So it's a give and take. Our food systems impact climate, and then climate impacts our food system. So people around the world are already suffering. Subsistence farmers not able to grow the foods that they're used to growing. So one main point is that we can eat plant foods. And when we eat plant foods, there is, of course, carbon footprint to everything. And it matters how it's grown. It matters if it's grown in a hothouse. The carbon footprint's way larger that way. Matters if it's organic or not for the planet, because there's pesticide use that happens. So there's a footprint involved in eating food. There just is. But the other side of the slide shows if we're growing feed and feeding it to an animal, it's intuitive. If you think about that, animal's growing the whole time. A lot of that food just goes toward the animal walking, keeping warm, growing. A lot of the calories are lost in the fecal matter or burned up. So it's actually a tiny fraction of the calories that we feed the cattle that ends up as calories that we would eat. So there is an inefficiency there. There just is a multiplier in calories. And so with certain farm animals, cows included, but also sheep and goats, they are all ruminants. And that means they're taking in carbon, but that was carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It became plant material. And then it comes out as methane, which is a more potent greenhouse gas. So, and we have a lot of cows on the planet right now. There's research here and there that show some promising results, but the vast majority of cows are not grown with any special way, and it has not been scaled at all. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. I wanted to show you one of the exercises that I do with my classes, because what I found in my work is that when people see the numbers for carbon footprints, that helps them make shifts that are actually end up being healthier for them. So seeing the numbers is really important. So I'll do this exercise while I put up some ingredients. We've kind of established that animal products have a higher footprint just by the conceptual slides we saw. So let's make a low carbon footprint sandwich. And we don't have to go through it slowly because I know we have not much time, but I'll give the students a worksheet and I'll have them fill it out. For example, like this would be hummus, avocado, lettuce, tomato, and then I show them the numbers. And so you can see here the numbers. Interestingly, Beyond and Impossible Burger both have the exact same carbon footprint, even though different studies, different researchers figured all of those numbers out. So these are the numbers. So you can kind of get the magnitude of them. They get multiplied out per serving. And so you're looking at around 300 grams of CO2 equivalents, meaning the methane's accounted for, but it's counted as if it were a CO2. Okay, so if we then make a typical sandwich with meat ingredients, you can go through, I've made the table for a cheeseburger here. So the startling thing is these are the numbers, and these are very well established numbers in the literature. It's just a fact that different foods have different carbon footprints. And when people see these numbers, then they realize, okay, now we're looking at 3,000 grams of CO2 equivalents. And so that's quite important. And we've been trying at UCLA to help people to understand what these numbers mean and what the benefits that could be gained if people even just learn the material. So foods, we've established here, foods vary quite a bit in the amount of greenhouse gases embodied in their production. So you can see the cheese also is from a ruminant. It's from a cow, so it does have, it's down there with lamb and beef with a higher footprint. And you see poultry and pork have much less because they are not ruminant. Milk has a high water content, so that's why the math works out that way. So this is a controversial topic these days. A lot of people say, well, what about grass-fed? So I've looked into this quite a bit because actually my husband really loved beef for a long, long time. So he wanted to really find a brand that worked or a restaurant that worked. So this is one set of data, but it's really representative because there's quite a few studies represented here. Carbon footprint is shown on the x-axis, and then there are different foods here. So you can see there's vegetable protein, seafood, milk, eggs. But what I want to draw your attention to are the top two, because this is really surprising to people. The pasture raised is the top bar, with every dot a different study, a whole different research project. And then the feedlot beef is right here. And you notice it's a ton of overlap, which is not intuitive. It's not, because in a feedlot, there's that whole growing a feed, shipping it. So you wonder, wait, how does that happen? The interesting thing is when you're growing a cow on grass, it's actually its most natural diet. So it actually creates more methane than if you're feeding it soy and corn. And so those two factors kind of cancel out, and there's a ton of overlap between the two farming methods in general. And then also you hear a lot about soil carbon sequestration, and there are papers here and there showing that if you graze the cattle just the right way, you can suck it down from the atmosphere. And there's just a few things to note about that. That is limited. That process saturates. And also you can't do it everywhere. A lot of lands only have a tiny amount. They already have a lot of carbon, so they can only sequester a little bit. It's also reversible. So given that the number, just using the best available numbers that we have, we started making infographics. So this is a bean burrito. The numbers in the white are carbon footprints for different ingredients. So we created a burrito with a certain amount of, around a third of the protein that you would need in a day is in this burrito, and around a third of the calories. And then you can see the total was 88. That total is swamped just by really modest amounts of dairy. So these numbers just don't lie. So it's just 1 ounce of cheese and 2 tablespoons of sour cream have a footprint just higher than the entire burrito. And so, yeah, so this is some of the entries on the Meals for Planet, just showing people the numbers and discussing why they are what they are. And so, for example, this one is a broccoli soup that uses a potato as the creamer. So you can make big, you can have big benefits in your carbon footprint, big reductions, by switching out dairy for cashew-based creamer or potato or even cauliflower is a good way to get a creamy soup. If you're making a broccoli soup, you can throw in cauliflower and use a blender. It can be a invertible one that you stick in, lost the word, but immersion blender, that's it. You can mix it up and have a delicious soup just because the cauliflower is lending that cream. And then a couple more here. If we look at pancakes, we don't really think about that as an animal product, and it has 200 grams CO2 per serving. We can pull that way down, but if you can find a plant-based alternative milk that you do like, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Another thing is making things at home is actually better for the planet. One reason is there's less packaging often, but also your ingredients may not have to be shipped so many places, and even shipped cold. That's an extra multiplier for the footprint. So if you can be mindful of that, it can help keep your footprint down. So what do all these numbers mean? We talked about 300, 3,000. What does that really mean? I'd like to talk about the Paris Climate Accord, which was the targets were set in Copenhagen. But this is the amount, around say 400 million metric tons of CO2 that our country needs to reduce. And if we actually divide that number by the population and the days in a year, we get around 3,000 grams of CO2 equivalents per person per day. So this should be very encouraging to all of us that not everyone wants us to have pulled out of Paris Climate Accord. Many people are still on it, still trying to have our states, our businesses pay attention to these guidelines, and then we also can. In fact, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that's the IPCC, has recognized that diet is a really important mitigation scheme. And so I did put in here some tips, just eating, find some plant-based cookbooks that you like. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Jenny. That was really, really interesting information. And I have to tell you, I was hungry looking at some of those wonderful things that you put up there. I am excited to try some of those substitutes. And we can take questions for Jenny at the end of the whole series today, but right now it's time for our first giveaway. I have a $25 gift card to Mother's Market. Mother's Market started in Costa Mesa and now has a South Bay location on Rosecrans near Aviation. Mother's Market and Kitchen is dedicated to manifesting truth, beauty, and goodness in the context of natural foods, markets, and restaurants. It offers a selection of high-quality natural foods, health products, and information. So, to entice at least one of you, hopefully all of you, will be enticed to go to Mother's Market. We are giving away a $25 gift card to Mothers. Okay, now it's time to move to our next speaker. Emily G is a change maker and a social impact leader that many of you may know. She spent some time here as Director of Global Programs and Co-Executive Director at Grades of Green. Grades of Green is an environmental education nonprofit founded here in the South Bay. Emily is currently the Marketing Communications Manager at Aerofarms. Aerofarms has been recognized as one of Fast Company's most innovative companies and Time's best inventions of 2019. Aerofarms is transforming agriculture, and their Dream Greens brand of baby and microgreens is a sustainably focused indoor vertical farming company. Too bad for us West Coasters, though. Dream Greens is currently only on the East Coast. I'm going to turn things over to Emily to talk about purpose-driven local food choices and how you can easily grow foods at home, even by regenerating food scraps. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peggy. I'm super excited to be here with everyone today. And Jenny learned so much. I was taking notes about the different carbon footprints of food. So definitely it's just some interesting things and always a field to continue learning in as well. And thank you, Peggy. A little bit about what I'll talk about today is kind of my work and research since college to now has really been on how can we create purpose-driven and sustainably driven behaviors, whether that's through being a consumer and in the grocery store, our decisions there, or whether that's through advocacy or environmental education through my time at Grades of Green as well. So really, how can we make sure that our decisions are purpose-driven and sustainable and that we can take those actions with us into the grocery store? So today I'll talk a little bit high level about our food system in general and the agritexture space, and then a little bit as well moving into then our day-to-day habits and purchase behavior and our food choices and how we really connect those two. So to get started on the kind of the broad scope of what's happening right now in the food world is because of the pandemic and COVID-19, it's really a time that we've taken a step back of how do we build a resilient food system and how can we really build that system that works. We saw during the height of the pandemic in the beginning stages that we had distribution channels that changed a little bit. We were unsure how food would get to us, and it really brought to light a lot of current issues that our food system faces. So on a positive, I think that it's brought a lot of thought leaders into the space of how can we do better to make sure that our planet is something that's a priority for us, and also how to make sure that people and are getting food that's fresh, that's nutritious, and that's also local. So it's brought a lot of this into the thought leadership space in food. And then from our side as a consumer as well, I think it's brought in a lot of, when we went to the grocery store in March and saw some empty shelves of how does our food get to the grocery store? And really, how does it really get into my cart or into my hand, and what level does that travel to? So a little bit about Aerofarms. That is the farm behind me right here. Our farm is in Newark, New Jersey. So like Peggy said, unfortunately, our greens aren't in the West Coast, but it's really in that model of keeping everything really hyper-local. So because the farm is in New Jersey, it then serves the greater tri-state area of New York and Connecticut and New Jersey to make sure that everything is hyper-local in the way that it happens as well. So a little bit about Aerofarms, I'll share my screen to get started, is let me see, I'm gonna open this up. I really think that I love the idea and kind of the example of Aerofarms as a way to talk about our food system, because it's a way that we really show, let me just open this up, 1 second. Okay. It's a way to really show that while sometimes we think about, climate change and we think about huge things that are happening right now in our world, there's a lot of innovation and a lot of kind of disruption for the better happening in the agriculture space. Really, as Jenny said as well, about 70% of our global freshwater, the freshwater contamination comes from agriculture as well. So really, because it is such a big player, it's a great idea to concentrate on how we eat to make a difference, and also what we can change in the way that we eat and the way that we grow food to decrease carbon footprint, and also make more purpose-driven behavior changes as a consumer as well. So this is a picture of our farm, and I'll show an up-close example into one of the trays. But because of the way that it's grown and where it's grown, it actually helps to bring food closer to communities. And that's something that I really want to talk about today, is making those local choices. Because our food can sometimes be shipped to get to us, that can be a huge part of actually the carbon footprint and the impact that it has on food. This particular that we see right here is growing our leafy greens, and Aerofarms chose to concentrate on growing leafy greens because the emissions that it can have, about 70% of our greens are grown on the West Coast, which is great on the West Coast. On the East Coast, that means that greens take a long time to travel to get there. So traveling means that it's emissions to get to a place that's far away. And it also means that there's more food waste associated with it. And in the leafy greens, specifically, about 70%, actually 76% of our leafy greens end up becoming food waste because it's a product that's so perishable, and that also we peel back the layers at every step of that distribution process. At the end, about 76% becomes food waste. So something that we really want to concentrate on is that local model, because it's not only decreasing emissions to get to us, but it's also decreasing what turns into food waste as well. So this is a little bit, these are some of the awards and programs that Aerofarms has been a part of. I also put it on the screen because there's so much innovation happening right now, and I think that that's something that's really interesting. So the background of what Aerofarms does behind me is called indoor vertical farming, but the space itself, I call it the ag tech space, or agriculture and technology. And it's a space that's really, really booming right now. And it's a way that we want to really think about how things are grown and how we can improve them, and a space that a lot of the thought leaders are moving into as well. And then this is a picture of how Aerofarms greens are actually grown. It's a process called aeroponics. It's a version of hydroponics. So if we think of hydroponics of how greens are grown in water, aeroponics is where greens are actually, our greens and our roots don't sit in water, they're just misted with water. So it's actually about 95% less water than traditional farming, and about 40% less water than hydroponics as well. So we're able to decrease the amount of fresh water needed, and also decrease the land space, because we're building up instead of out. We're able to have our regenerative agriculture, our soil recover from it as well. And we're able to then bring those greens closer to communities like we talked about too. So all in all of those put together, this is one example, and Aerofarms is proud to be part of the solution, but one example of how do we really rebuild that resilient food system. And there's so many great ways that we can do that with our food choices, what we're doing, and by the products that we support and the farmers that we support as well, and the way that we want to grow too. So I'll get into a little bit about that. That's a little bit about Aerofarms. And then here's a product. These are our microgreens, which is I put this on here because this is my favorite product. Microgreens, if you see them in the store, they're very small greens and they're very nutrient dense as well. So it's a great product to be able to get nutrition, and also get really fresh product as well if we see it. And these are sold on the East Coast, but we have some different microgreens varieties on the West Coast as well here. So now I'm going to stop my screen share and say a little bit about how do we translate this, what's happening in the food world and what's happening with these big ideas of how do we decrease our climate footprint and take that into our everyday food purchasing choices. So the first thing that I wanted to mention is looking for products when we're at the grocery store. One of my favorite things is to look for the certifications that are on it. For example, a B Corp certification is putting people and planet first. So I look for that a lot. For the B Corp logo is something to look for. And then also looking for things that are locally grown. So locally sourced is a great way to decrease our footprint. And maybe that's the farmer's market. Maybe that's looking for products in the store that are also certified. And those are great certifications and different ways to be able to immediately look at different products and our product choices. And then to bring it local, one way that we can also really decrease our footprint is by seeing what we can grow at home or repurpose at home as well. So transitioning a little bit, I brought some props to show today of a few different ways that I repurpose at home and really try to bring those into everyday habits. Before I get started, I will say, I feel like the idea and the journey of food is so individual for everyone, and how we can all play a role. So I'll say several different ideas, and I would say if we can all take home like one idea that works for us, that's really the best way I found, and it's all a journey. I was just talking to my family, and for example, I like to start out by saying, my eco action for 2019 was to make sure that I am really freezing my food scraps and being able to use it in soups. And I will say, most of the time I try to do it, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So just putting it out there that we're all on a journey, and whatever little bit that we can take to make a difference, I think is the best that we can continue to do, and keep sharing and swapping ideas. And I always learn something, whether it's from Jenny and different presentations as well. So hopefully there's one trick to pick up from here. So a few that I'll say is the first one for food scraps is the bottom of eggs. I keep them and I will use them either on top of plants as compost, or if I'm using them to plant new plants inside of them. So that's one way to reuse eggshells before throwing them away or composting them, depending on where you're at and what that takes. The next thing that I use is after I have squeezed out my lemon. If you have any extra lemon, I use that as well. Sometimes to clean, I'll put salt inside of the lemon and clean either the top of a cutting board, or use it as a scouring way to clean as well. So that's one idea. And then the next one is before cans. This was once a soup can. And before putting that in the recycle bin, I try to find different ways to use this. So one food related way as well is regrowing food scraps. And this one, I have to give credit to my dad, Don, who has been a member of the South Bay community for 40 years and is an excellent plant grower. And he shared some examples of what food scraps that he's been growing. But one is green onions. So I don't know if you can see this one, but he actually, after he cuts the green onions and uses them, he directly plants them in here to then regrow. And this one he's regrown, let's see if I can show it, almost all the way. So he puts them directly inside and with the roots and all inside. So using it, chopping it, and then just directly planting that back in. And that's a great way to regrow food scraps. Some other ideas of food scraps that grow pretty easily, I would say, are the bottom of garlic cloves, if you're looking for garlic cloves, and the bottom of onions as well. So things that have that are easy to kind of start with that regrowth process to be able to see. Green onions, I would say, is just a fun one to be able to see quick growth. Also, especially right now when we're all at home, it's fun to be able to see the instant gratification of those greens coming back in as well. And then the last one that I wanted to show is a few examples of regrowing with seeds. So these were apple seeds, and he puts those apple seeds inside of a napkin to start the growth process, even with apple seeds. So before putting an apple seed into a composter, getting those out, and then it turns into these little sprouts. So this will be an apple tree, and this is his mango tree. So starting from a mango seed as well. So ways to just see what's around us before we are putting something into the trash can or into the composter as well. And then two more tips. Before, specifically with leafy greens, when our leafy greens may be getting a little wilted or we're not quite sure what to do, I have 3 ways that I like to use my leafy greens I call them on the way out. The first one is putting them into smoothies, because I think that's a great way that they're already breaking down and we can't tell if it's a little bit wilted. The second is I will use them in soups and as soup stock. And the third is putting them directly into the freezer. And then the next time I'm making a meal, I'll take those out from the freezer as well. So just making sure that any food scraps possible we're trying to use in other ways. And then the last thing, I had this one at home and just thought I'd show it in case this really sparks any ideas of the foodies out there, the people who are interested in how food and sustainability are going together. This is my current book that I'm reading on my nightstand, Hungry by Eve Turow-Paul. And it's a great look just at our current food culture. So much of what I feel like what we are studying right now and what we're looking at is this food culture that we've built and how that really relates to purpose-driven decisions and sustainability as well. So in case anyone this sparks ideas or wants to learn more, this is a book that I'm currently reading on my nightstand.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was really interesting. And I will say that when I was at the store today and I was looking to buy blueberries, I saw product of Peru and I went, yeah, no, I can't buy those. So anyways, okay, it's time for our second giveaway. This time, prize is a reusable utensil kit from the Wasteless shop. And the winner is Karen Ladnier. Karen, you are the lucky winner of this fantastic utensil kit from the Wasteless Shop, which you will see even has a straw and a straw cleaner and chopsticks. So these utensils are important for our environment because studies have shown that more than 100 million pieces of plastic utensils are used by Americans every day. Plastic utensils are too small to be recycled, and they can take up to 1,000 years to decompose. Even utensils that are made from plant or bioplastics are no better because they have to be industrially composted, and those facilities simply don't exist in Southern California. So disposable utensils were number 4 in the top 10 list of items found during last month's coastal cleanup. So even if you didn't win the kit, you can still be a winner by making or buying your own reusable utensil kits and just saying no to disposable utensils. So now I know that all of you have tons of questions for our speakers this evening. So this looks like this could be a question either for either of our speakers. Are there any specific questions that you can ask when you're at a restaurant and you're looking for something more eco-friendly to select on the menu?
You can ask for plant-based foods, so that's an easy way because it's just sort of restaurants are used to thinking about vegetarians or vegans who can't eat meat. And so if you are trying to go green for that day, you can just choose the plant-based option. And also just portions, saving some of it for home to reduce the meat you might have another day. So portion control on the meat and dairy products, I would say, is a good way to be green.
Mm-hmm. And to be healthy too. Portion control is always good for being healthy. Another participant asked if you, Jenny, could talk a little bit more about personal actions that we can take to basically help meet the Paris Pledge,
Sure.
reduce our personal footprint by 3,000,
yeah,
a day. So,
right. So do you mean related to food or not related to food? Because there's a whole bunch related to food.
Spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch related to food, first of all, and a lot of it Emily mentioned, which was so great. I loved the talk, by the way, of just eating local food and all that. And also just how you get around. Transportation is a big one. So if you can bike, walk places, then that's a benefit. Oh, one fun tip that I'll do if I am going to a restaurant, just throw a plastic Tupperware in your bag, because we all have nice containers around our home. And if you have that packaging there, you're actually more likely to take your leftovers home because you're not asking the restaurant to waste one of their packages. So I find that's a really good tip, and it just works better. It goes in your fridge and it works nicer. So that's a tip. And I did want to do a book recommendation. It's called How Bad Are Bananas? And it gives you the carbon footprint of everything, including streaming information, texting, all of these things that have a footprint, and it gives you the numbers. And so I've gotten some numbers from that book and some tips that, like, for example, if you're making coffee or tea, just use the amount of water that you need, not too much water. You save a lot of energy just doing that. Put a lid on the pot. That saves a lot of energy. And you're more likely to want to do these tips if you see the numbers, and the book presents all the numbers. So that's been helpful for me.
So again, I think because as part of our new lived experience during this pandemic, people are ordering in, and even when people are dining out, just to get out of the house, now that they can go to a restaurant, it's like, yay, finally, I can go out into the world. So, what are some of the other things that you should look for? For example, should you try to prioritize a farm to table restaurant, or a restaurant that identifies itself as being farm to table. Is that kind of a legitimate thing? Should you steer clear of some of these more exotic, you know, kind of high-end, high-tech places? What should we be doing to try to be mindful in our relationship with the food providers in our current community?
Did you want to take that one, Emily, first?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that one. I mean, I will say I am a total foodie. I love making food. I love eating out. I just came from living in New York City for a few years. So as if anyone is listening and also feels that, I mean, I love eating out as well. And I would say for me, some ways that I try to keep sustainability in mind when I'm going to restaurants, exactly as Jenny said, either bringing my own Tupperware, supporting a local restaurant that's around the area, if there's one that you really like, and then choosing the dishes that maybe there's one that's locally sourced or sustainably sourced, maybe finding out where the items on the menu are from, and being able to do that. And what I found too is like sometimes it can also lead, I find food leads to such a fun conversation. So just a way to even ask, where something's from, it can really lead to a great conversation. And I think it also helps to show interest of when someone asks, it helps other people kind of keep that top of mind as well. So a bonus point of just asking to start that conversation and maybe helping someone else think about that as well. So to me, I love eating out. I love cooking. I choose, my kind of options just based on what food I really like that day. But do try to keep in mind where the food is from or starting the conversation. And if it's from, and I will say too, for me, if it's something that I really enjoy and it's from farther away, I still, I will eat it and talk about it and I wonder where that's from. And I try to ask questions to myself too, like, let me look that up. Why is that from there? Why do we get that from that area and how is it shipped? So just being, informing myself as well, because I feel like it changes all the time and every meal is so different.
So I have a question, and then I think we are going to have to move on because it's already 8 o'clock. I can't believe it. So in my family, I have 2 daughters and a husband and myself. And my husband is a carnivore. He is like, if there's not meat on the table, it's not a meal. So what can you suggest? I mean, if we're making a meatless meal, but he insists on meat, and so he has meat, should we go ahead and eat it too? Not considering our personal health, but I mean, is it impactful if 3 out of 4 say, we're only going to do meat twice a week or something like that, while he's having meat 3 times a day, every day?
I think it's all impactful. Every step that every person can take is impactful. And I'm sort of in the same boat in that I'm the only plant-based 100% person in my house. And so we do a lot of foods that are just bars and people take what they want. And so that everyone makes their own meal.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I have been having a lot more ginger. Like I eat, I have it in tea. I put it in because it just seems like during all of this, time of wanting immune support or something that feels. Is there anything about that particular ginger root? I buy it at the store in the big, root and chop it up myself. But is there anything I should know about it?
I think it's also healthy and delicious. I agree. I don't know anything negative about it.
Okay.
Emily, do you know anything?
Yeah, I agree. Although I will say, exactly like that when I'm in the store and I'm like, I wonder what this is or where it came from. I'll sometimes just Google it and figure it out or find where the sourcing is. And also sometimes I find really interesting aspects as well. Like, I didn't even know that ginger could be made with that, or I didn't know it was from there as well. So
yeah, I guess Google is our great resource for
just looking, and also because I feel like there's so many different potential origins of where it can be from, you know, where different food items can be from as well. Finding out where that is and looking back to.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, and so I have one more question, and this is about eggs. And either of you can suggest how to figure out when I go into the store and I say, okay, I'm going to get organic eggs, but are they free range? Are they, you know, with all of these additional omega-3 nutrients added to them? Are they, you know, because are they natural fed? Or I mean, there are all these different choices, and I want to make the best choice, but I have no idea what the best choice is.
So great that you are thinking about that, because in some cases that if it just says cage free, it can actually be worse for the animals, because they're in this big free for all barn, and they're not technically in a cage, but they're in a hellscape, because they just have no social, they have no way to create their pecking order. That's a real term, because they like to have a social structure and they just can't find it. They might be kept in the dark all the time. Like, just cage free alone doesn't mean anything, could actually mean something negative. And so some of the farms, I know it is more expensive, but if you really want to do the right thing by the chickens, some farms actually have webcams where you can see the actual pasture. And so pasture raised is very different than cage free, because they're outside and they have roosting and natural behavior. So I would say that's a better term to use. And if you can find the ones with the webcam, it's kind of fun to check that out.
Yeah, thank you.
Or at the farmer's market, if there's a way to talk to the farmer there as well. Just to Jenny's point too, either seeing the farm or being able to talk to someone always makes me excited to be able to connect with it, and then just connect with the food as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. Yes. All right. Thank you.
Peggy, there was one more question on the chat, which was from Kirsten. And how do we know if a food label certification is legitimate?
As far as like the different types of certifications, there are so many different types and different variations. Again, I will look up what certifications mean and then be able to see them. And then also different certifications have different lengths of time that they're kind of able to be certified for. So depending on, you know, what the product is and what you're looking for, there's, you know, non-GMO verified project is another form of a certification as well. To me, the one that I personally look for most often is the B Corp logo and the B Corp certification. Another great kind of purpose-driven certification that I look for was actually originally started from Patagonia, is 1% for the planet. And that's where the 1% of the company's profits would then go back in to social impact as well. So definitely several certifications out there, and looking more about them can help make sure that the brands that we choose are aligned with what we're looking for. But for me personally, I tend to gravitate toward B Corp as the if I have two options of what I'll pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, just chiming in, I make sure I always buy fair trade chocolate, coffee, things like that, because it's very important for the workers' reimbursement as well, or compensation. And I'm wondering if anyone else has seen little fake labels. You have to be careful, because I know some companies, I've seen it, will have a little round seal that looks at first glance like one of those seals, and it's just not at all anything. It might say like nut free, but it's made to look like a little seal.
So we need to bring our glasses to the store, make sure you have your readers ready for our shopping.
If there are any more questions, both Ginny and Emily said they would stick around for a little bit, but we don't want you to go yet. We want to share a little bit of additional information with you. And remember, we still have one more giveaway, so please stay to the bitter end. So we have upcoming webinars. Mark your calendars. You can see the dates on the screen. The next one is December 3rd. Lisa Ryder is going to teach us about ways we can live a greener life through actions that we take at home, including gardening, composting, reducing energy usage, collecting rainwater, that is if we have any rain to collect. And then January, we're going to talk about microplastics, February, the PPP that we're all using, and March 25th, sort of a wrap up of all kinds of eco-friendly choices for everyday life. We will also send this information out, but you may want to screenshot this as well. These are some resources that you can access to learn more about some of the topics that we have been going over this evening. The Biggest Little Farm is a documentary that I watched that was hugely impactful for me and so entertaining. I hope you do watch that. But all of these are wonderful resources for you to educate yourself more on this. And then here are some things you can do every day to reduce your own personal carbon footprint. So you may want to screenshot these as well. Again, we will send them out after this webinar to all of our attendees, but things to take action on. And then lastly, but really, really importantly, is to use your voice in defense of our planet, and to work with organizations that are trying to reorient our thoughts and our actions on a global basis, on a national basis, on a local basis, to try to preserve our very, very fragile and ever so necessary planet Earth. So our last giveaway now, this is for a Postmates, $50 Postmates gift certificate that Jibe has been kind enough to donate to us. Jibe, for your information, is an app that makes it easy for you to support restaurants that use sustainable packaging, to-go packaging, which was one of the things that Jenny mentioned, bring your own. Some places won't let you bring your own during COVID, but Jibe is trying to have the power of the purse, namely the consumers, focus on restaurants that are using planet-friendly containers. So let's see if we have a winner yet. Not yet. Dolly is figuring it out. Okay, Steph McNamara is the winner of this $50 gift certificate to Postmates. So we hope that you will try to source your meal from a restaurant that does have environmentally friendly packaging and gets their products also from our local community as well, if possible. Okay, so that is the conclusion of our formal official webinar. Emily and Jenny, thank you so much for sharing your time and your vast knowledge and expertise with us. We really, really appreciate all of the insights that you gave us tonight. And I think everyone is going to go away inspired to source some planet-friendly meals and some planet-friendly takeout and grow some. I'm going to grow some of those green onions.
Oh my gosh,
Me
that
too.
and
I can't
ginger. Okay, so
Yeah.
Amy Lime on our call was saying that you can grow ginger. So that's my goal.
New project. That's great.
Exciting, yeah. And I think there may be some potatoes already growing in my bin in my pantry, because
You know what? Okay, so I actually see a really quick question popped up. How do you handle excess packaging, even if it's from products with B seal? So, I mean, I guess it's one of those, does it recycle or does it, what do you do with the packaging?
Yeah, I can. If I have extra packaging around something, and I call it at Grades of Green, we used to call it the crinkle test. So if it doesn't pass the crinkle test, where if you put it next to your ear, it makes a crinkle noise, it means that when it goes to the materials recovery facility, it'll probably be too small and it'll get stuck in that MRF area. So if I'm buying something and I realize I'm like, oh, it doesn't pass the crinkle test, but I want to reuse it. For me, I have a dog, and so I will keep those bags and first try to use them as poop bags, or just find a different way to try to reuse it. And my kind of my not rule of thumb, but what I try for is to see if I can find one more use out of it. And then hopefully my goal is, in a few more years, or I'll see if I can find 2 uses for something before it goes in that waste stream. So just trying to see if there's creative ways to use it before it enters.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just now also getting interested in writing these companies and saying, gosh, I just really wish that you packaged what I love to, buy from you in something that could go into my compost or whatever.
Yeah, and also looking on the back too. I mean, even when we see plastic, there's so many different types of plastic. Like, is it post-consumer recycled? Is it, is it virgin plastic? Is it, what's it made out of? And just learning more about it. I think that's a great. I love that. Yeah, I think again, bonus points for writing in. I think it's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. What a inspiring evening.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.